David signs the final paper, shakes the banker's hand, and takes the keys. He just bought a house. He feels proud, secure, and confident that he is finally building real wealth. Across town on the exact same day, Sarah signs a lease for a house that looks almost identical. She feels a little guilty. Her parents told her that renting is just throwing money away, paying someone else's mortgage. At first glance, the winner here seems obvious. David owns an asset. Sarah holds a stack of rent receipts. David is building equity. Sarah is just surviving. But the math of the American dream has quietly changed. 10 years later, the scoreboard is going to reveal a massive reversal. One of them is going to end up over $50,000 richer. And it is probably not the person you expect, because the real cost of housing is rarely the number they show you on day one. Let's keep this fair. David and Sarah both earn $90,000 a year. They both want to live in the same neighborhood. They both have $50,000 saved up. The only difference is what they do with it. David puts his $50,000 down as a 10% down payment on a $450,000 house. He takes out a 30-year mortgage at 6.5% interest. His principal and interest payment comes out to around $2,530 a month. But that is not where the number stops. Add property taxes, roughly $500 a month. Add homeowner's insurance, around $170 a month. His total monthly housing payment is now $3,200. Every single month. Sarah rents the house next door for $2,500 a month. She keeps her $50,000 in a low-cost index fund. And every month, she takes the $700 difference between her rent and David's total payment and automatically invests that too. On day one, David feels like the winner. He has a deed. He has an asset. He has something to show for his money. Sarah feels like she is falling behind. She is renting. She has no equity. Every month, her rent goes out the door and never comes back. But here is what neither of them fully understands yet. David's $3,200 a month is not all going toward ownership either. In the first year of a 6.5% mortgage, roughly 75% of every payment goes straight to the bank as interest. Not equity, not ownership, just the cost of borrowing the money. The scoreboard at the end of year one is going to be uncomfortable for David. Let's run the numbers through year one. David has paid $3,200 a month for 12 months. That is $38,400 in total housing costs. Of that, roughly $19,500 went to interest. Money paid directly to the bank, gone forever. About $6,000 went to property taxes and insurance, also gone. Only around $4,900 actually reduced his loan balance. His house has not appreciated dramatically in 1 year. He still owes about $395,000 on a home worth roughly $460,000. His equity after 1 full year is around $65,000, mostly just the down payment he brought in on day one. Sarah has paid $2,500 a month in rent. That is $30,000 for the year. Her $50,000 index fund has grown to around $54,000 at an 8% annual return. Her $700 monthly investment contributions have added another $8,700 to her portfolio. Her total invested wealth at the end of year one is approximately $62,700. So let's look at the scoreboard. David has $65,000 in home equity. Sarah has $62,700 in liquid investments. On the surface, David is slightly ahead, and he feels it. He talks about his house at dinner parties. He sends photos of the backyard. He feels like a real adult who made the right call. Sarah says nothing. Her portfolio does not make for good conversation, but her money is working quietly, and it is not locked behind a wall that costs 6% to break through. The first year looks like a tie. But year one is not where this story ends. Here is the part of the story that the mortgage brochure never shows you. In year two, David's water heater dies. That is $1,200 out of pocket. The roof has a small leak. A contractor quotes him $3,500 to fix it properly. His homeowner's insurance premium goes up at renewal because insurance costs across the country have risen nearly 48% in the past 5 years. His property tax assessment comes in higher than expected. These are not rare, unlucky events. They are the normal, predictable cost of owning a home. A 2025 analysis by Zillow and Thumbtack found that the average American homeowner now spends nearly $16,000 per year on costs that sit on top of the mortgage. That breaks down to roughly $10,900 in maintenance, $2,000 in insurance, and $3,000 in property taxes every single year. That is an extra $1,325 a month that David's mortgage payment never mentioned. David knew about taxes and insurance. He did not fully account for the maintenance. Nobody does. It never feels real until the furnace stops working at midnight in January. Sarah's landlord handles all of it: the roof, the water heater, the broken dishwasher. Sarah writes one check a month, and her housing costs are done. She does not get a call on a Sunday about a burst pipe. She does not lose a weekend to a contractor who does not show up. Now, this does not mean renting is free of problems. Landlords can be slow, unresponsive, and frustrating. But financially, the unpredictability sits entirely on David's side of the ledger. Every surprise repair David pays for is money that does not go toward equity. It does not appear on any balance sheet. It just disappears, exactly the same way rent does. The only difference is that nobody warned David it was coming. Year 5 is where the story shifts, but not in the direction you might expect. Sarah gets a letter from her landlord. Her rent is going up. Again, it has gone up every single year, averaging around 4% annually. When she moved in, she was paying $2,500 a month. By year 5, she is paying just over $3,000. Her monthly investment contributions have shrunk because the gap between her rent and David's payment has narrowed. The cushion she had is thinning. David, meanwhile, has not received a single letter about his mortgage going up. His principal and interest payment is exactly what it was on day 1. $2,530, fixed, locked in, untouchable. While Sarah's housing cost has crept upward every year, David's biggest line item has stayed perfectly still. This is the quiet, underappreciated power of a fixed-rate mortgage. It is not just a loan. It is a hedge against inflation. Every year that passes, David's payment becomes a smaller and smaller percentage of his income as salaries and prices rise around it. In 10 years, that $2,530 will feel like a bargain. In 20 years, it will feel almost laughably cheap. Sarah starts to feel the pressure. The flexibility she loved in year 1 is starting to feel less like freedom and more like uncertainty. She does not know what her rent will be in year 6 or year 7. She cannot plan around a number that keeps moving, and here is the psychological cost that the spreadsheets never capture. Every renewal letter is a small moment of anxiety. Will she be able to afford it? Will the landlord decide to sell? Will she have to move? David sleeps well on that front. His address is not going anywhere, and that stability, that certainty, has a real financial value that is almost impossible to put a number on. 10 years in, this is where the full picture finally comes into focus. David's house has appreciated. A 4% average annual growth rate on a $450,000 home brings it to roughly $666,000. That sounds incredible. He has gained over $200,000 in value. He feels wealthy. He talks about his equity at every opportunity. But let's do the math that David has not done. Over 10 years, David has paid $38,400 a year in mortgage, taxes, and insurance. That is $384,000 in payments. On top of that, he has spent an average of $10,000 a year on maintenance and repairs. A conservative estimate based on real data. That is another $100,000. His total out-of-pocket cost over 10 years is roughly $484,000. Now he wants to sell. The agent takes 5 to 6% in commission. On a $666,000 home, that is around $37,000 gone immediately. Closing costs take another $5,000. He walks away with approximately $624,000 from the sale, minus his remaining loan balance of around $375,000. His net proceeds are roughly $249,000. Subtract his original $50,000 down payment, and his actual gain from 10 years of home ownership is around $199,000. Impressive, but now divide that by 10 years of total costs, and the real return is more modest than the headline number suggests. Now look at Sarah. Her $50,000 initial investment, growing at 8% annually for 10 years, is worth approximately $108,000. Her monthly contributions, averaging around $600 a month across the decade as her rent rose and her gap narrowed, have compounded to roughly $110,000. Her total portfolio at year 10 is approximately $218,000. Sarah's wealth is entirely liquid. She can access it tomorrow. She does not need a real estate agent, a closing attorney, or a 6-week escrow process. She does not owe anyone a commission. The gap between them is not enormous, but here is what matters. Sarah's $218,000 is free. David's $249,000 is trapped inside a house he has to sell to access. And the moment he sells, he has to live somewhere, which means he is right back in the market, buying or renting all over again. The scoreboard is closer than either of them expected, and that alone should make both of them think differently about the choice they made. I would be lying if I said renting always wins, because there is one massive assumption buried inside Sarah's story that most people never talk about. Sarah invested the difference, every single month, automatically, without fail, for 10 years. Most people do not do that. The rent and invest the difference strategy is mathematically brilliant and behaviorally brutal. When the market drops 20% in a bad year, Sarah has to watch her portfolio shrink and do nothing. When her friends are renovating kitchens and posting photos, she has to keep clicking buy on an index fund. When her rent goes up and the margin tightens, she has to cut somewhere else to keep investing. David never had that choice. His mortgage payment left his account automatically. He had no option to skip it, reduce it, or redirect it when life got difficult. His home equity was built by force. And for the vast majority of people, that forced discipline is worth more than the theoretical return advantage of investing. There is also something that the numbers cannot fully measure. David can paint his walls any color he wants. He can get a dog without asking permission. He can renovate the kitchen, plant a garden, and build something that genuinely feels like his. That sense of stability, permanence, and ownership has a psychological value that is real, even if it does not show up on a balance sheet. Buying is not a mistake. Renting is not throwing money away. The mistake is making either decision without understanding what it actually costs you over time. David and Sarah both made a reasonable choice on the same day. Neither of them was reckless. Neither of them was stupid. They just had different assumptions about where wealth actually comes from. The real trap is not renting. The real trap is not buying. The real trap is making a $500,000 decision based on a feeling, the pride of ownership or the guilt of renting, without ever sitting down and running the numbers past month 1. Renting is only throwing money away if you spend the savings. Buying is only a guaranteed wealth builder if you stay long enough, maintain the property, and account for every cost that never appears in the mortgage brochure. The question is never rent or buy. The question is always, what does this actually cost me when it is all over? Because that is the only number that has ever mattered.